As we continue our live coverage today, the tensions continue to rise in the region. The aviation sector has become one of the first industries to feel the immediate impact. Airspace restriction, precautionary measures, and changing flight paths are forcing airlines across the Gulf to adapt quickly to ensure the safety of passengers and crews while maintaining operational continuity. For Kuwait, a country that serves as an important regional hub for travel and cargo movement, these developments raise key questions about airlines' operations, logistics, and the broader economic implications. Now, to discuss how the aviation sector is navigating these challenges and how the airlines are responding to the evolving regional situations, we are happily joined here today in the studio by Mr. Barathan Pasupathi, Chief Executive Officer of Jazeera Airways. Mr. Pasupathi, thank you for being here with us today. Now, if you don't mind, we'll get into the details of it because I know you have a lot of information to share with us today. With the recent escalations that's happening and the closures and restriction of the airspace of several Gulf states, how has the situation directly affected the operational planning of your airways?
First and foremost, Abdul Rahim, I want to thank you and KFTV2 for having us here today and for allowing us not only to tell our story during this, it's already 11 days, the crisis of 11 days now, but more importantly to share on how it's affecting the Middle East and importantly Kuwait. Yes. But first and foremost, at Jazeera Airways, we'd like to tell all the viewers, most of them have been customers of Jazeera Airways, that we stand in solidarity with them and we feel for them, and we believe just as we have seen the crisis of last year with the two wars, we'll come out of this and Kuwait will come out of this stronger.
Sure.
Now, specifically in answering your question, if you look at what this 11-day crisis so far has done, it has not only impacted Jazeera Airways. As you know, Kuwait Airways has also been affected. Likewise, all the airlines in the 6 GCC countries have been affected. And so what happened on the 28th of February, very early in the morning, no one expected it. But however, the rhetoric you've been hearing for the weeks before this had all airlines, not only Jazeera Airways, for planning for various scenarios. Some expected it to last for a week, some expected to last 2 weeks, some could not even see or fathom that this could happen today. In terms of how it's affected our planning, it has disrupted our full network. I think the first fundamental priority in any crisis is the safety of our customers and people and protecting the aircraft, the engines and the assets around the business. So what we actually did when the crisis broke up in early morning at 7+, we activated our emergency response planning teams and they did a marvelous job. The planning, the pre-planning, the mitigation that we've took with all the risk assessments made sure that when the aircraft were in the air, they were given a safe passage to actually land in airports safe outside of Kuwait. Aircrafts in Kuwait, which were about to take off, remained in Kuwait and turned back to the terminal and passengers were offloaded. So basically what happened there was a complete network shutdown. And so what happened for us, 50% of our fleet remained in Kuwait, 50% of our fleet remained elsewhere in Egypt, in Istanbul, in Jordan, in other places, the UAE.
Grounded before taking off.
Grounded before taking off, but with the simple principle of the safety of our customers and people.
Now, like you mentioned, on the 28th, nobody anticipated the attack. One of the first attacks that happened was on Kuwait International Airport. Now, explain to us, you said you've implemented the plans. I know there's a contingency plan for the operations for the airlines. What is the coordination that's happened between the airlines and the Public Authority for Civil Aviation, and how did it effectively go, move smoothly to where we are today?
Look, just as the crisis, the 12-day war we witnessed of last year, where it was quite different from what we see this year, right? Kuwait was directly impacted. And last year, the Iranian airspace was impacted. And so flying through and to Iran was affected. In this crisis, you had no one phantom, all the GCC airspace being shut down. And Kuwait, in fact, has been shut down for 11 days, while some of the countries in GCC have opened up. Now, when that happened and networks were shut down, we didn't really anticipate the full closure of Kuwait airport. But what we did is we worked with the DGCA, the MOI, the MOD, and MOFA to some extent as well. So you must understand, aviation is about connecting people.
Yes.
Countries to cities.
Yes.
And communities. So people were impacted, and when it broke out, we had more than 200, almost 300 people in our terminal that were impacted when Kuwait was impacted on 28th of February. So we had to make sure that we lock down the terminal, we give safe passage to them, we then extract them out from the terminal and put them into hotels.
Now, I will come back to this point because I know part of your operation during this crisis is dealing with the customers and potentially, because I know some of our viewers are actually worried. Some of them have prior bookings. They want to know what the travel plans, but we'll get into that for further details. But let's come back. As you know, many countries in the regions, including Kuwait, have temporarily closed or restricted their airspace due to security concerns. How challenging is it for the airlines to manage flight schedules such under rapidly changing conditions?
Airways and navigation pathways or waypoints are the lifeblood of aviation. In fact, they are sacred passages that should never be disrupted for aviation, on the premise that it connects humanity, it connects cities, it connects countries. So what we saw in the initial days of this disruption was each country was acting on its own in terms of when it closed the airspace without coordination. However, lately we have seen quite a fair bit of coordination around the GCC skies. But when that happened, basically you cut off city links, you cut off economies. And I come from a small country called Singapore. You know, everything is imported. Likewise in Kuwait.
Yes.
When the Straits of Hormuz is impacted, you cut off supply. The supply chain on top of e-commerce of bringing in food and produce, medical products, essential items, perishables. So everything was cut off in that aspect. I think I'd like to touch on the point that you mentioned that the airspace was closed or remained closed in some of the GCC countries. Actually, it's not. Today, if you look at flight radar, you'll see a lot of aircraft movements. You don't see it in Kuwait as yet, but you'll see it in the UAE, you'll see it in Qatar, you'll see it in Saudi Arabia. Now, I have to mention, Saudi Arabia is one GCC country that has really kept its whole airspace open, and it has been a savior to all of us in many ways, and we'll touch on the topic of Al Qaisuma later in Hafrabatan region in terms of what we've done today as well.
Now, like you mentioned, and actually yesterday or a day before, we had a guest here in the studio who is from the customs, and we touched base on this issue that most of the flight coming into Kuwait, the cargo flights, have been grounded and stopped, and they redirected their routes towards border entry. Now, we'll come into how Jazeera Airways fixed the scheduling during this crisis. You know, airlines across the region have been forced to reroute flights or suspend routes entirely. What adjustment had Jazeera Airways had to make in terms of flight path, fuel planning, and operational safety?
You will be pleased to know we have actually continued flying. However, the initial days when it happened on the 28th, we did the most logical thing of cooling off the network, parking all the aircraft, assessing flight schedules, waypoints, and the team at Jazeera smartly pivoted. We were doing, you must understand, this is Ramadan.
Yes.
This is a holy period of Ramadan. And in this period, we were doing a lot of Umrah flying. So we had a huge demand in Umrah flying that was actually coming from markets into Kuwait and going into Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, Medina, as you know. However, what Jazeera did very smartly, when it happened, it went to regulators in Saudi Arabia. It went to regulators in other points when you were flying through Kuwait to Saudi Arabia and negotiated direct flying. In fact, after the 28, when you cooled off by parking the aircraft to ensure that people and customers are safe, we then relaunched flying from Jeddah and Medina. We have been flying non-stop on Umrah flying to Grozny, to Makhachkala, to Nalchik, and even to Osh and to the CIS when we were able to do that. But right now, some of it is curtailed, but we continued flying, and even today, as I speak to you, flights have been going on for the last number of days. So that is one aspect of this. Then we took a view that we need to get into dual operations. The core network in Kuwait was impacted, so customers couldn't go from Kuwait to UAE, couldn't go from Kuwait to Egypt, which is one of the biggest market segments. We then took the so-called planning that Jeddah and Medina will continue with Umrah flying, and we needed to find another safe port, a safe haven to recommence international flying for Kuwait.
Mr. Pasupathi, we will touch more based on this issue, but I want to turn to one of our correspondents, Sheikha Tamimi, who will give us the update. I think she's at the Kuwait Blood Bank. Sheikha, can you hear me?
Yes, Abdurrahim, I can hear you.
Sheikha, Central Department of Blood and Cellular Therapy at the Ministry of Health have announced that Kuwait has successfully raised around 2,000 blood units during the recent campaign. How does this response reflect the solidarity and resilience of Kuwaiti citizens and residents?
I can draw my answer tonight from my own observation as I arrived at the venue, and as I was parking my car, there were continuous cars coming behind me, and I also saw a lot of people inside the blood bank themselves, various nationalities, residents and citizens alike, everyone sharing the same responsibility, everyone sharing the same love that we have for Kuwait and the same admiration, as we all want to donate blood to help maintain an adequate medical blood reserve in the nation during these times.
A strong national blood reserve during times of regional unrest, and what message do you want to share with the people who are considering donating?
Donating blood during these times, and not just during these turbulent times, even on regular days as we enjoy our safety and security, is such a beautiful, selfless act to perform. You don't have to be a specific nationality, you don't have to be a specific career, you just have to be a person who has the same love and admiration that we have for the same soil that we are standing on during right now. If you have no health issues, no health concerns, my simple request and message would be to just come and donate, please. The donation windows are at 2 times, during the morning and during the evening, and the workers at the Central Blood Bank are all eager to help everyone who wants to donate. with me here actually is my guest, Abdullah Al-Najdi, PR department at the STC Kuwait, and they brought their own employees here for their own, out of their national responsibility to donate their blood. So good evening, Abdullah. Can you tell me about the turnout of employees at the blood bank?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for being here today with us. We are proud of our collaboration with the blood bank. It's not our first time to collaborate with them, but since we are in this current time, it's our responsibility and social responsibility to be part of the blood donation and the blood supply as well. So being here today, it's a must, and everyone participated. We had like over 150 employees today with us participating in the blood donation. Our collaboration will continue, inshallah, with the blood bank, not for now, but also from time to time, inshallah. We will bring more of our employees to participate. And even our CEO, we had the honor to have our CEO participating today and did the blood donation as well.
So what kind of small message you can give to our dear viewers during as we are going live tonight?
So whatever we do for our country, our Kuwait, and for our people, it's nothing compared to what the first liners are doing, the army and everyone supporting us. So our addition, I hope that can add value to especially for the blood supply. And inshallah, God's keep our country safe, and we pass this time.
Thank you, Abdullah Najdi, PR department at STC Kuwait. And as I will reiterate on his own statement, which is what our frontliners are doing is of tremendous value. And if we can do one small act of donating our blood to our dear homeland to make sure that our medical reserves will not be overwhelmed during any possible times of crises, then let's just go ahead and do that. I would also like to remind our viewers, this is at this point is just a reminder on and on again. Do not spread any kind of rumors, and please take your information from the correct official sources. From the Kuwait Central Blood Bank, back to you at the studio.
Thank you, Sheikh At-Tamimi, and be safe. Let's take a quick break and we'll continue with this live coverage. Welcome back to this live coverage, bringing you the latest developments and breaking news from Kuwait and around the region. Still with me in the studio is my guest, Barathan Pasupathi, Chief Executive Officer of Jazeera Airways. Now, we spoke briefly about rerouting aviations and finding a way to accommodate all the services that Jazeera Airways provide. Now, the aviator sector is highly sensitive to geopolitical developments. What has been immediate financial impact on airline revenue due to flight suspensions, cancellations, and a lower passenger demand?
It's a great question. First and foremost, I did comment on Bloomberg recently that airlines in the GCC are living the worst case scenario. If you heard what the CEO of Saudi Aramco said a few days ago, is catastrophic in its word. For aviation, it's an amazing industry. It is an industry that's gone through various cycles. I was here in Kuwait between 2007 and 10. We didn't have a war then. It was a global financial crisis. Aviation bounced back. Yes, there are basically analysts who are saying that this crisis, given the escalation of Brent, and more importantly crack on top of Brent, which makes more PAC or jet fuel, that is one issue. The other issue of what closed airspaces, the dual whammy of these are providing huge headwinds into aviation, and a lot of airlines will not do well in the foreseeable future. But I just want the viewers and analysts to understand this is a very different crisis. This is a very different crisis. This hopefully is not a COVID situation. If you recall, I think COVID was the worst case situation that any aviation regulator, jurisdiction, or airspace has witnessed. Singapore was locked down for almost 2+ years. Kuwait partially, and then it opened up. Middle East opened up. But if you look at this situation, yes, it has happened. It has also happened in one of the softer periods in terms of demand and supply cycles, Ramadan. So actually going into a Ramadan, a lot of airlines have actually withdrawn capacity, preparing into what's post-Ramadan in a very Eid season. And then after Eid, you get into a very peak summer season. So it's a blessing in disguise, but it's unfortunate we are in this situation with the 11-day lockdown, but capacity was already withdrawn. Aircraft were sent out for maintenance. In fact, at Jazeera, almost 18 to 20% of our fleet, when I say they were away, they were in an engineering program, an engine program, or seat retrofit program. So we actually took away the capacity. Yeah, that's number one. Soft landing or soft season. I won't say soft landing, soft season. Okay. The second thing is, given the other situation of this impacting the whole network, and that we have already shown resilience, great resilience in Jazeera, that we recommenced and pivoted some aircraft metal into Jeddah and Medina. We commenced flying almost day plus 48 to 72 hours. We commenced flying. We got approvals and we commenced flying from KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to other points to bring Umrah traffic. And people were pleased, customers were pleased that we were able to serve them and to the commitments we had with them. But more importantly, this morning, I think you've seen it itself.
Yes.
We pivoted capacity, even though Kuwait was closed 10, 11 days, into Al Kasuma Airport. And we launched our flights, 145 customers, Kuwaitis. There was a Lebanese person I met, Egyptians. When I waited at the airport, preparing with the Saudi government and GACA, amazing regulator in Saudi Arabia, and our stakeholders and partners, SGS, and we're waiting for the buses to arrive, you should see the smiles on the faces in terms of how Jazeera has pivoted the capacity and enabled international flying again. So yes, financials will be impacted, coming very specifically to your question, but we were already planning for a soft March. Now the question is, how far is this going to be?
Yes.
From all indication and rhetoric that you saw going into the war, and now we see into the 11-day war to date, all right? You never know how long it's going to go. The people want to end this. I don't have the crystal ball, but I can tell you at Jazeera we have got amazing partners who have partnered us for the last 20 years, who've gone through various cycles, including COVID, and we just reactivated the COVID action plans in terms of mothballing costs, looking after people, but this is a very different crisis. Unlike COVID, we have all the intention to keep our people because we are going to grow in Q4 of this year.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned COVID, as I consider COVID is a case study, because post-COVID, we've seen a lot of restructuring of airlines internationally. A lot of airlines suffered huge financial deficits. Now, with this crisis, there's a different risk towards it. I want to ask you this specifically. During COVID period, people were anxious to go back to their daily life. But in the current situation now, with airlines rerouting, finding other routes, how is it for the consumer feeling safe enough to fly out of this region?
Okay. Let me just flip you back even before COVID into SARS. In Singapore, if you know, severe acute respiratory syndrome, it impacted market, and markets actually collapsed. The stock market went down into a 6 delta correction, and airlines just parked the aircrafts. Massive turmoil. Then you had COVID, the 3-year shutdown. And yes, you're right. Airlines restructured. But the unique story about Jazeera, this is a unique story. It actually grew in COVID. If you look at what Jazeera has been, I was here for the first tour in Jazeera CFO between 07 and 10. We kept aircraft, global financial crisis hit. We set up a very unique aircraft leasing company. We did very well. And then come COVID, Jazeera actually took advantage of the situation where aircraft was available in the market. Manufacturers, both engine manufacturers and aircraft manufacturers could not sell their, because no one wanted at that stage, and the price points of aircraft and aircraft assets were reasonable. So what did Jazeera do? We sealed a 26 aircraft order book, 2020, 2021, and those are going to be delivered this year. So, and Jazeera grew 3 multiples from 7 aircraft to 21, 22 aircraft. Yes, airlines restructured themselves. This could be very different from COVID, but we still believe, fundamentally we believe that there will be some level of stability returning cautiously. We are cautiously optimistic there will be some level of stability returning. You already see this. The GCC cannot be disconnected to the world, because today, as we speak, the GCC accounts for 10% of global aviation traffic and 12% of all the inbound seats in the world, because when I go home to Singapore, I'm going through the GCC. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not going to India. It's a central
hub between Asia
and
an
essential hub between Asia to Europe, Middle East to the US, Europe, India to the US and Europe. This is a key and a very important hub that has served global aviation in a very phenomenal way. Saudi Arabia actually grew by 40% since 2019. The UAE has been growing. The only market that actually hasn't rebounded outside from Kuwait is Kuwait, because the traffic numbers in Kuwait still are lagging the COVID numbers. The rest of the GCC has actually grown. So there's a huge opportunity for Kuwait.
Inshallah, inshallah. Now, looking at the broader economic picture, how could prolonged disruption to aviation and cargo movement impact the Gulf trade, tourism, and connectivity with the global markets?
Again, I put a preamble there that I don't have a crystal ball. I can just give you some scenarios in terms of where it is. If you build various scenarios, you say the low case, mid case, and the high case. Look, if it affects 11 days in a market where you really need import products, you cannot remain unconnected. So Jazeera has actually reached out, Jazeera has been approached by various parties, including the Ministry of Commerce, to restart. I think if you recall, during COVID, all the national carriers, Kuwait Airways and Jazeera Airways, came out.
Yes, yes.
So we are going to dedicate a number of fleet to serve Kuwait, because we know we have to serve the community, and we will be reaching out to stakeholders. We've been reached out to a lot of wholesale suppliers, perishables, medical equipment. We've been reached out to move people out of Kuwait in certain sectors. So cargo and produce movement is essential and important, and it has to happen, especially right now if you put the other risk of the Straits of Hormuz. There's no sea lanes, and the only way Kuwait can be connected in terms of commerce and e-commerce and products is through air lanes. And so it's great to see, I fundamentally believe Kuwait will open up. I believe the DGCA, I believe the Ministry of Defense will collaborate, just as we've seen in the UAE. Today, as we speak, Emirates is almost flying everywhere else in the world.
Okay.
Likewise, other carriers are doing so too.
Well, Mr. Barathan, I would like to, have a further discussion with you, but we are running out of time. I just want to have one more question, if you don't mind. What measures are the airlines like Jazeera Airways is taking to ensure the safety of passengers and crew while maintaining operational continuity during the sensitive period?
Okay. We have a simple saying in Jazeera: safety is a foundation for growth, and it's safety first, safety always. If you look at what's happening right now, aircrafts are flying into parts where you could have hazards. So in a situation like this, you'll do risk mitigation. You'll make sure you do the risk assessments, and you have a primary airport, a secondary airport in the event of an incident or airspace closures. I have been on multiple flights. In fact, I've been flying until I could not fly, when airspace was closed, I had to drive almost 800 kilometers to Kuwait via Al Kasuma after we did the launch. And you find that aviation is one of the most clinical and precision-based industry, where everything is not left to chance. At Jazeera, we do the same thing. In fact, we organized Kuwait's first aviation safety forum last year. We basically look at rerouting. We carry extra fuel. Pilots given pre-briefings, and if you go into certain hazardous areas, we put very experienced pilots into those so-called waypoints that they have to fly into. So that's done. But I think the one thing I would like to address is Al Kasuma. If you see what you have done today, we have re-established international connectivity for Kuwait. And we are getting some tremendous reception. Just coming into the studio, it's a lot of people are talking about Jazeera and asking for seats. Yeah. It's a pleasure, and I always say this. We started sponsoring a club called Qadsiya. Okay. We say Qadsiya is Watan, and I say Jazeera is Watan. Yeah.
Mr. Barathan Pasupathi, it's a pleasure having you here with us today. We wish you all success, and we also pray to Allah Almighty to safeguard this country and its people. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.